Well, now for something completely different. First of all, good day or good evening, depending where you are when you watch this video. I've just published a new book entitled Completely New History of the World Cup 1930 to 2022. What's different about it and why is it completely new? Well, firstly, I have an absolute passion for football from my early days as a pretty mediocre player to 5 years in Brazil working and watching football. It's completely new because it's one of the first about all the World Cups, including the incredible one in Qatar, which we've just witnessed. And why is it different? Because it provides amusing stories, disputes, scandals, even conspiracy theories about all 22 World Cups, from the initial one in 1930 right up to that World Cup we all witnessed in Qatar last November. The book raises many questions and has a stab at all the answers. The very first World Cup in 1930 was held in what was little known at that time, Montevideo in Uruguay, a country most footballers in Europe had probably never heard of. But players from 4 European countries agreed to participate in the tournament and traveled for 3 weeks in a steamship to get to Montevideo, and basically they had no idea where they were going, and they weren't getting paid much either. What's that all about? Well, you can read more about it in the book. We comment also on Mussolini's brilliant Italian team, which won the 1934 and 1938 World Cups, with fascism thriving, World War II approaching. How did Mussolini do it? Did he really bribe the Swedish referee? Then in 1950 in Brazil, the USA, with a team of part-timers, defeated the England team, one of the tournament favourites, just as President Truman, the American president, was sending troops into Korea to start the Korean War. So England's humiliating defeat did not make the newspaper headlines until a few days later. In 1954 in Switzerland, we witnessed Puskás and his mighty Magyars losing to West Germany in the final, having beaten them 8-3 in the group match. How could this happen? Read all about it. In 1958, football's first superstar emerged, a 17-year-old named Pele, who scored 6 goals in 4 matches, including 2 in the final in Stockholm, and took the world by storm in the first World Cup that was televised worldwide. But did you know that as a 17-year-old, Pele amassed a total of 62 goals in his first year as a Santos player? More about Pele later. Yes, just 17 years old. The world's biggest earthquake almost stopped the 1962 World Cup in Chile, but what we saw instead were exhilarating displays by Garrincha, and Brazil won again. Well, in 1066, it was William the Conqueror, and in 1966, it was all about Off Ramsey the Conqueror. And we devoted 10 pages to his heroics and Geoff Hurst's hat-trick. How could Sir Off drop Jimmy Greaves for the final? At that time, one of the world's greatest players. But it all worked out in the end, and England reigned supreme. But maybe never again. 1978, it was Argentina's turn, despite a horrific revolution that was going on at the same time, killing thousands of innocent Argentinians. And frankly, that World Cup should never have been allowed to take place. In 1986, it was Maradona who created the magic, and you can read all about his hand of God goal against England and the repercussions. This was followed 3 minutes later by his truly awesome solo effort with half the England team chasing him. Don't go yet, please. Wait for our blockbuster finale at the end of the video. In 1990, we covered the penalty shootout, which ended England's chances of another final, when Chris Waddle's penalty went high in the sky, bounced into the athletics track, and into the safe hands of a spectator. In 1994, we go to the home of the brave for the USA's first World Cup, with the perfect final for their fans between Brazil and Italy. This World Cup saved American and Canadian soccer and gave birth to the current Major League Soccer. The next World Cup saw first-time appearances as host country for South Africa and Russia, and this was followed by our grand finale in 2022 by the most amazing World Cup in Qatar, which had absolutely everything. Penalty shootouts, last-minute goals, virtual disputes, scandals, Harry Kane's penalty against France which could have saved the game for England, went high in the Qatar skies, almost as high as Chris Waddle's in 1990, although Harry wouldn't have witnessed it because simply stated he wasn't born then. And then blistering performances by Messi and Mbappe in the final, displaying all their magical skills in an absolute blockbuster of a World Cup. Probably the most entertaining of all the 22 that have taken place since the first one, yes, 92 years ago in Montevideo. We finished with an appendix consisting of chapters on the mighty Magyars of the 1950s who went 42 games undefeated, Mussolini's well-prepared Italian team of the 1930s, the Brazilian Magic serving up 5 World Cup wins, and finally, on a very, very sad note, an obituary of the greatest football in World Cup history, the unforgettable and incredibly talented Edson Arantes do Nascimento, better known to us as simply Pele. Never once cautioned, always smiling, an example to all aspiring young footballers. Rivellino summed it up by saying Brazil will never be short of talent, as every young Brazilian kid is trying to be another Pele. Actually, I may be wrong about Pele. I have a feeling he was sent off in a match against Argentina in São Paulo in 1964. Maybe a Brazilian fan can help me on that one. The book hopefully will serve as a celebration of what has turned out to be the world's greatest sporting event. And if you're a fan of the World Cup, I think you'll enjoy it. And maybe your children or grandchildren also, if they find it on your bookshelf and see all those photos. That's all for now. Next book on the way, a completely new history of North and South American football. Firstly, however, don't forget to read about the World Cup. Hasta mañana, boa noite,